Welcome to The Work Within, where we have conversations about mental health and faith to help you live with greater connection and wholeness in your everyday life. The Work Within is a podcast of the Watershed initiative, supporting the mental health needs of the local church. Thanks for listening. Hi, welcome to The Work Within. I'm your host, John Lynn, and today I'm joined by my co-host, Dieula and Paul McMullen, who are both fantastic therapists, ministers, and friends. Welcome to the show, y'all. Today, we want to talk about an overdrive kind of life. What does that mean? It's when our lives feel overscheduled, overworked, overwhelmed, overtired, and we're wondering, is there anything we could do to get off that train? And the good news is there is. But first, let me share a little vignette, okay? There's this long straight road that leads outside my neighborhood, and it's bookmarked by 2 traffic lights. And every now and then, I get a little chuckle when I'm driving along this road and someone comes up speeding behind me and tailgates me, and then veers to the right, cuts me off, and then does the same thing with a couple other cars. That's not the part that makes me chuckle. Where I chuckle is when several seconds later, I slowly pull up to said car, look over, and I see them waiting impatiently at the red traffic light. And I always think to myself, gosh, all that energy, all that aggressive energy, all that madness, all that effort, and here we are. It just got you faster to the same spot that we are now sitting before in this light. I am not here to cast stones. We're not about that in this podcast. So God bless you if you are that driver. I have been that driver as well. But the larger observation that I want to make is this. I think sometimes all of us approach life in this kind of way. It's like we're rushing and we're striving and we're swerving and going and just going, expending all sorts of energy and feeling stressed and just trying to get there faster, wherever there happens to be. And all that rushing and madness and energy, like, where does it get us? It just gets us to the same place, only faster and maybe more tired. And I know this isn't a perfect metaphor because sometimes, the person does beat the light. Okay, let's grant that. But what I share that illustration because I think it does highlight some of the futility of all that energy and like, what's it actually accomplishing? And so I think there are moments in our lives where we step back and we're just like, what is all this effort for? Why do I feel so tired all the time? Why am I overworked, and why is my schedule just packed to the brim, and what's it all trying to do? Like, why am I really doing all of this? And so if you've ever felt those things, if you find that you are feeling that way right now, then what we want to say is you're not alone. Like, we've all been there. And the good news is there are things that we can do about that. There are things that we can do to understand what is driving some of those behaviors. And what I hope in this show is to discuss some perspectives or ways that we can get to a more sustainable pace in life. So, Dieula and Paul, I would love for you guys just to start off the conversation. What would you like to say to someone who finds themselves feeling like the pace of my life is just not sustainable and I don't know what to do about it?
Thank you so much for having me on the show. To someone that's noticing, I would say congratulations, because most of us don't notice until it gets to a point that's driving us into therapy. You know, you not notice it in a way where it's meaningful. Your body is telling you, your body is sending alarms all over the place. You're not sleeping, you're tired, but no one ever does anything about it. No one ever names it. No one ever says that I'm feeling this way because I have an overdrive life. I'm feeling this way because I'm doing too much. And so for someone to notice, I would be it's super proud of that person. I would give them a high five because awareness is a big deal. And half of the time there's very little awareness going on that we are doing too much and we need to change it. So for someone to come to that realization, that's a big deal. So kudos, good job. You're doing it.
Yeah, I agree, Dieula. Awareness is the key. Like I think we'll probably say that a lot on this podcast.
Yeah.
But I first of all, I totally identify, especially with the driving thing, John. That was getting a little too close to home, and I case in point, if I can be allowed, this last weekend, just like trying to rush to get to one of our kids' contests, and we try to pull through fast food. I won't mention where we were at, uh, and we're stuck behind this car, and there's no way out. And the person in front of us is like sending the food back through the window, saying, like they didn't make the burger right. And this is the first time I've ever done this. I rolled down my window and I was like, let's go. And so I feel the conviction of this one a whole lot. But I think if I'm speaking, to, I think a lot of us, we feel that conviction. We know something is off. Like, oh, I shouldn't really be rushing. This is not making me have a good, abundant life. This is not the abundant life Jesus was talking about. But at the same time, we've got these good reasons why we feel like we need to hurry. We need to rush. We need to fill in more into our schedule. And whether that's making it to the kids' performance or making it to the next church event or making it to church on time, or making it anywhere, on time. And just in the hurry that we're in our culture, I just think there's that battle between we're rushing and at the same time we've got these good things we're trying to fit into our life and be on time for. So that's the battle. I want to identify with that and just say that's why we're doing this podcast. It's a hard thing to figure out.
Hmm. Yeah, that's great. And I wanted to point out something that, like as I've observed other people, I do see some folks where it's like this overdrive kind of describes all facets of life. It's just so they work hard, they play hard, they parent hard. It's just everything. There's like one setting and it's go, go, go. All right. And maybe you identify with that. I found that most people, though, it's a little more spread out, or it's like certain areas of their lives or my life is overdrive. And then there are other areas that are maybe slower paced or maybe more average pace. So, for example, like I think for a lot of people with work, the area of work, it often feels it's just maxed out. And a lot of people I talk to, every time we talk about work, it's just like lots of sighs, like, oh, work is really tough right now. It's just long hours. It's the grind, and you feel that stress. And that's a very common experience. But it's not necessarily for all people. And so I also hear people, maybe I talk to parents, for example, who they have a part-time job as a unpaid Uber driver, carting their children around from activity to activity, like all evening after school, all weekend, and life is just packed with, like you mentioned, Paul, just so many activities for the sake of their children. And these are good things. If it's not children, maybe it's like serving and leadership and volunteering. And so folks that are just very active in leading and leadership and trying to make a difference. But again, the schedule is just maybe overwhelmed. And so I just wanted to just point out, oh yeah, there's this one other one, I think, and this might sound a little bit weird, but I know folks that play really hard. And so there is always a vacation or a happy hour or a fun thing or a game night or social, and that crowds the schedule. And it's like the leisure becomes something that's sort of on overdrive. So I wanted to point out, I think there are different ways this can manifest and be expressed in our lives. But what other patterns have y'all noticed when it comes to this kind of life, this overdrive, hurried kind of life?
Well, I was waiting for Dieula.
Go ahead, Paul.
Um, I really think that this is, I hesitate to use the word epidemic because that feels a little overstating, but I do think this is, stemming from where we're at as a culture. I think technology is a piece of that. I think our individualistic culture is a piece of that. But you just think about, I can remember the time I've heard this from several, from probably from several sermons, but I remember the time when I would wait for somebody at a coffee shop because I got there early, I would have to wait. Maybe I brought a book to read, maybe there was a newspaper, but now I can get on my phone and I can send in a quick email, or I'll check, I'll check one or two things that I can get done for the day. And so there's not, because of technology, there is not this margin in the day that is clearly defined for many of us as this is work, this is not work. And I think that really makes it challenging to turn those switches off and say, okay, now I'm in rest mode. And it's even when you go back to your room at night and you lay in your bed and then you have your technology right there still, and you can just keep going. And so I think we're plugged in, but it's really hard to turn off that internal switch for rest. And so I do think that is a trend that is part of the problem.
I think, you know, part of what, Paul, you're sharing is that urgency. Everything, there's an urgency behind everything when you're living in the overdrive life. It's almost like if I don't get to it right away, something catastrophic is going to happen, you know? Um, and I'm always wondering what will happen if the kids don't join this sports team? What will happen if I say no? What will happen if I sit there in quiet, in stillness, waiting for my friend? What is going to happen? What are we afraid of? I'm always wondering, what are we afraid of if these things, if these balls that we're juggling drop, So there's this urgency that that's going on. And if we do not speak to the urgency, it will make everything in life feel as if we have to approach it anxiously. That if that doesn't happen, life will fall apart. But will it? Right? So there's this sense of urgency that's that's driving all of this, and we never speak to it because we feel as if that urgency is there. That's what we must do. But is it? Is that what we must do? Is there another way? So I
Mhm.
always question that. I'm always trying to poke at it a little bit to see what's behind that urgency.
I think that you said it, Drilla, that there's fear underneath that, and you think about FOMO being included in the new dictionary, like fear of missing out.
Yeah.
That says something, but I think what you're saying is, can we slow down and say, what is the fear? Is it that I don't look, my life doesn't look as impressive as I feel like it should at this point, or I'm not gonna be considered a good parent if I don't have my kids in this program,
Yeah.
and again, just doing that analysis of what am I afraid of? What's driving that urgency? I think that's really good.
Yeah, and it's just so much information, like on social media, for example. It's almost as if this urgency makes me feel as if I should know all the information. I should click on all the links. I should know all the history. I should know everything. And that urgency, and then it's very quick, 30 seconds clip, a minute and a half clip. If I click into it, then I'll know all there is to know about 50 years of history, 50 years of medical, this and that. And I can solve all the world's problem only if I do this real quick. It's going to solve all the world's problems, but will it? right? And I get sucked into that too because I find myself scrolling and just moving fast and doing it real quick. And then I get that little dopamine hit, and then, I'm fine. And then I find myself doing it all over again. It's insane. It's insane. And it's insane because do we pause and ask the question to what end? So for the first question you asked, John, for somebody to have that level of awareness, that's huge,
Yeah.
because half the
Mhm.
time when we do it, there's no awareness. We're just doing it subconsciously.
I like that a lot. This idea of I'm feeling the urgency, so I'm going, going, going. But if I can just take a step back and ask myself, what's the worst thing that could happen if I don't do X or Y or Z or get there? What's the worst thing can happen? Because often I do find that my body is responding in such a way that the worst thing that can happen is terrible,
Mhm.
that the world's going to end. But if I can actually start to think and get my brain back online. So my wife often will ask me, like, John, what's the worst thing that would happen? And all of a sudden, I'm like, well, okay, so we're a little late and maybe they're a little disappointed. Like all of a sudden I'm like, okay, it's not that bad. And that kind of that brings down the anxiety a lot. And Paul, what you mentioned about the technology, several years ago, I made the decision to get rid of my work email on my phone. And that has been life changing, friends. And so I
Mm,
highly recommend it
mhm.
if you are able to remove work email from your phone. I know not everyone can do that, but if you can, that's a huge thing. Now, full disclosure, I will from time to time add my work email back to my phone because I have to check something. I have to get a contact or a direction or something like that. But then I will remove it again. And I
I
keep
love
doing
that.
this process because it forces me to really think, okay, do I really need to have my work email on here? So you guys have started to get to some of the things that are driving this overdrive kind of life. So this fear, that's born out of this urgency that's born out of fear, technological things. What else do you see that is driving people's overdrive?
I mean, I think it gets down to something we believe about ourselves too. Um, Again, we're hitting on the point of I feel like I have to be involved. I feel like I need to make this decision or else something's going to happen. And I think that again, culturally, we like to feel like we can do anything, we can accomplish anything, and we don't have a great respect for our own limitations. And that's not a very fun word to say, hey, we need to believe in our limitations, but that's a much more right-sized, it's a more biblical view of who we are. We were not made to solve every problem. We were not made to be able to go, 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 and never get tired. We were not made to go it alone and try to solve all the world's problems. And so I think again, we're going up against a belief system in our culture that we need to question and challenge and say, is the fruit of what's happening in my life reflective of the kingdom of God, or is the fruit reflective of something else? And living high stress, high anxiety lives that move towards burnout is not their reflection. And again, not saying that from a posture of judgment and shame, saying I feel that constantly in myself and the need for I think God gently calling us back to a rhythm of life that he made us for that's so much better than that experience.
Yeah, yeah,
Love that.
that's
Can I
great.
believe in my limitations? I wonder those who are listening or watching how that feels to even say that. I believe in my limitations.
Mm,
Does that feel like weird or does that feel honest? And I think there is a measure of humility to and truth, right? We are limited. And yet I think you're absolutely right, Paul. We are taught not to acknowledge or confess those limitations, but to
yeah,
actually do opposite and just say, hey, I got this. I can do it. I can do it.
yeah. I think that we really believe that more will make us happier, you know, more stuff, more money. Um, the accumulation of more, the larger, the bigger, the better, the happier we will be. Um, and so the what's driving us is the more, you know. If we have our kids in better activities and sports and this tutoring program and this 24/7 this and that, they'll have better opportunities and they'll be happier and they'll be better and it will determine their outcome in life, you know. If we live in this neighborhood, you know, and we'll be happier, but to live in this neighborhood, we have to work 70, 80-hour week. But once we get to this neighborhood, we'll be happier. We'll be this. I think there's this underlying, and again, I don't think these are conscious thoughts. I think these are subconscious thoughts that we have that's driving us. And if we don't interrogate and if
Mhm.
we don't bring them to the surface, they really do drive our behaviors. Every night there's something going on, you know, because we really believe if we do these things, we will be better, we will be happier. And my question is always, are we happier? Are we better? And what constitutes as happier? What kind of happy are we searching for? I do believe we're searching for something. We're all in search of something. Search of significance, search for meaning, I search for rest, maybe, search for peace. But 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 the way that we're going about being at peace, being at rest is killing us, right? And I think I came to the conclusion that I did not want this kind of life for myself after my brother passed. You know, when my brother passed, I came to the realization with my life that, you know, I came to ask my life some questions. What have I been doing with my life? What is the work that I want to pour myself into? You know, post the death of my brother. Because when someone dies in your life and they're close, they give you a different picture of how you've been living and how you want to live in the future. How I've been living is that I've been missing a lot of things. I haven't been focused. I haven't been present. I've been all over the place and I don't want that life anymore. And so my brother's passing caused me to ask some questions of my life. Is this how I want to live my life? Is this how I want to go about my life? And I didn't. And so I started changing some things about my life. But we do need to ask these questions of ourselves. How am I living? How am
I,
I living? Is it good enough?
I appreciate that word interrogate. It's very evocative. We don't normally think about interrogating ourselves. And it does remind me, several years ago, I was working in an environment where um, I found myself just chronically stressed. I would go to the office and then I would work to the very last minute of, and a little bit beyond the minutes where I knew I needed to leave in order to pick up my kids in time. But I would try to maximize every single second, and then I would basically run to my car and then drive like a madman on the car, trying to get to the pickup line in time. And the whole time I'm just stressed and I'm just like, oh crap, I should have left earlier. And then I know I'm not going to make it in time. And then I would be a little bit late and then I would feel bad. And then I'd get home and then I could not turn it off. I would just be thinking about work and about deadlines and things that needed to happen. And my family life suffered for it. I wasn't present. And yeah, through different things, I started to interrogate, like, what's this about? What's
Hmm.
driving this? And I started to realize is the thing that was driving was like, I felt this need to prove something. I felt the need to
Mhm.
prove something about myself to my coworkers, my colleagues, supervisors, the people around me, even to myself, because underneath that, what was driving that was just some deep wounds around my own self-worth. And so seeking validation became the way to meet that wound. And so, I wouldn't have been able to get there apart from doing some of that interrogation work.
Mhm.
And I was surprised to find what was driving this behavior. And so it wouldn't have been enough just to be like, well, I just need to leave earlier. I need to be better about making more time to pick up my kids. It
Mhm.
Yeah.
was needing to recognize the source of this this
Yeah.
energy. And that began some process and pathway to kind of a better way.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, could you all distinguish, because I do want to also make the point that what's the difference between the seasons of life where we do have to hustle and we are working hard and it's appropriate? Um, what's the difference between that and an overdrive kind of life? Or where does one start to move from necessary? Like, I also recognize there's seasons of life when you have a new child, when you get a new job, or move to a new place, or like in my situation, our house is getting repaired because of a flood incident, like a leaking incident. And so life is a little chaotic and we're needing to do extra. And so that's appropriate. It'd be kind of naive to think, oh, everything's just going to be the same and calm during this time. So how would you distinguish that?
That's a good point, John.
Yeah.
And you know, for those that are teachers or preachers, there's often you can give these lessons about how you should slow down and make time for this and that and this and how to have better spiritual practices. And you've got the new mom or the single mom in the room, and it's like, that's really nice to hear, but how do I actually do that? That is, my life doesn't have that kind of space and margin. And so when I work, and especially working with families and with newborns, it is it is a recognition that we need to have grace for ourselves in these moments, and you kind of have to steal time when you can. But I still think it's good to question because what again? There's always that question of what's pushing, what's driving the expectations of how I'm doing this, and is the fear of that what's causing me to live at a particular pace, or is it just the moment itself? Is it, I've got to finish this work project by Friday, and so I think there are those moments, and we can give ourselves grace and say like, okay, I'm going to finish this, and then we'll move into a season of rest. But then if you find yourself kind of chronically, the next week feels the same, and then the next week feels the same, it is good to go back and say, is there something systemic here that's happening that keeps me in this pace versus it being just a season of life or a season of my work environment. So yeah, I would say you got to have grace for yourself, but then analyze: does this keep happening?
Yeah. I think the other difference is the overdrive life is on autopilot. There's no stopping it. There's no awareness. You're just going just to be going with no goals, no purpose. You're just going. You're just living life without pausing to examine your life, to ask the questions, to even think to yourself. There are seasons in life, like as a mother, or you just finished college, you just gave birth, or your kids are out of the house. There are seasons in life where you know, your life feels heavier than others. What I would say for those seasons of life is that to be present in those seasons of life, to pay attention what's happening in those seasons of life, because I'm a mother, and like Paul said, give yourself grace in those seasons of life. What happens in the overdrive life is that it's super unhealthy. It's super, you're on autopilot. There's no end, there's no beginning, there's no morning, there's no daytime. Everything just kind of blends together, and you're just going, 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 and you don't know why.
Mm.
You have no idea why you're living this way. You just know that's how you ought to be living, you know? Whereas the mother, she knows why. The brand new father
Mhm.
knows why.
Right.
You just
Mhm.
started a brand new job. You know what's going on with you because there's a huge learning curve and you have to spend the hours to kind of learn your new job and learn your new position, but you know that's not where you're going to end up for forever. This is just for seasons. You know it's a season. The person in the overdrive life does not know it's a season. That's life. That's
I
life for them.
love that. I
Yeah,
love that, Jola. Thank you for saying that.
yeah.
And it dovetails so well with I remember there was a scripture I came across in high school. And I was in the throes of I think junior year, just really trying to achieve and do well and all this stuff, feeling very overwhelmed, overdriven. And I came across Psalm 46:10.
Mm,
And I remember when I first heard it, I was like, oh, wow. And it says, be still
mhm.
and know that I am God. And I feel like that really speaks to what you just said, Jirla, about we don't even know why we're doing it. And so this kind of psalmist reflection, or I guess invitation, invites us to reorient our perspective. Know why, like know what's the bigger picture. And for people of faith or who call themselves Christ followers, this idea that actually be still and know that there is a God, and this idea that okay, my life, my world is not the center point, and there is something greater, grander that I can be invited to. And I
Mm.
know for me, that was very comforting. I don't hear this as like a be still, it's like this wonderful invitation, be still and
Yeah.
know that I am God. And your life, it's going to be okay. Yeah.
And don't miss it.
Yeah,
Don't be going so fast that you miss these moments. And that missing God in the moment, but it also goes for missing each other, you know?
yeah,
Like I could miss my kids, I could blink and then whoa, they're bigger. How do I how do I slow down on purpose to be present with them and just soak in that moment? Like being still as a discipline gives you the gift of presence with other people, and there's something to be gained from it. The fear is I'm gonna lose out by not doing more, but really you get something, I think, whenever you slow down to be present with other people and with
yeah.
God.
That's good.
How do we go about downshifting? How do we go
Yeah.
about downshift? Let's talk more about that as we begin to wrap up.
You know,
Yeah.
one thing I want to say is that work is good. Finding meaning in your work and doing it well and having gifts and talents. I know for me, I just turned 50 and I feel like I'm just now arriving at the work of my heart. And I love the work I do. I get to empower women. I get to do trauma healing. I get to lead. I get to do all these things. And I love it. And I'm traveling and I'm doing different things. I'm not tired from it. It feels good. It feels like, I finally arrived to the work of my heart. What I'm noticing at arriving at the work of my heart is that I've created a schedule that also gives me life and breath. So, talking about downshifting, I've created a schedule where I'm working out in the morning. I wake up in the morning and I'm walking miles. I create 2 hours in my schedule so that I can wake up easefully. My friends they know me because they're like, "Okay, did you have your gentle morning this morning?" Because I don't want to wake up aggressively.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
life is already punching me in my face before the first hour of me waking up. I don't want to wake up aggressively. I want to wake up easefully. I started reading this book called The Artist Way. Have you guys heard of The Artist Way? By Julia Cameron. So I have it right in front of me because I've been working through it. And Let me tell you, if there's anyone that's been living in the overdrive life and need a little manual to help them get out of that, read this book because it takes you through different exercises to help you figure out the work of your heart where you can integrate self-care, walking and meditation and praying and even writing in the morning, journaling in the morning, all those things, because you need that. And to get out of that, to downshift, you don't just wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to downshift. It has to be intentional.
Mhm.
It's an intentional practice and allowing the awareness to come forth so that you can tell yourself that this is not working for me. This life is not working for me. So I want to be intentional and create a plan as far as how do I want to live my life? And so for me, I'm living in this season of my life where I've arrived at the work that I love to do, but because I love it, I'm going to include some elements of self-care and rest and pause and meditation and those things. That's preserved the work that I love to do and make me love it even more because I've included those things in it.
Yeah, that's so good. Um, and I love, Dieula, that you're in that spot in your life and career. That makes me happy and excited.
Thank you.
Um, I I share something with clients that I learned actually in a discipleship program by a guy named Mike Breen, and he uses the scripture John 15, where it talks about a vineyard, and it talks about being branches on the vine, and the vine is Jesus. And it talks about how there's seasons where to bear fruit, the branches are actually pruned back where they're not bearing any fruit, where it feels like nothing's happening. But if they're not pruned back, then they're not able to grow the next season into something that's fuller and stronger that can hold and bear more fruit. And so the theme of that scripture is, if you go back and read it, if you remain, in the older English is the word abide, if you can abide and stay connected into the vine, you will bear fruit. In other words, you will be productive in this thing that God's made you to do. If you can stay connected and abide, you will eventually bear fruit. And it's both active and passive, it's
Yeah.
like purposely being there. And then there's also these times where it feels like I want to be doing a lot and I feel like my whole life has been pruned back and I got nothing to show for it. What's going on? And just to take comfort knowing, okay, that could be a moment that God is doing something intentionally in your life for a reason. And so with that framework, I like to draw a little pendulum, and I know some people are just listening to this and not seeing it online, but I'll draw a pendulum between work and rest that just kind of goes back and forth. And thinking about that on a daily basis, what does it look like to build just a good work rest rhythm in my day, like what Jerla was saying? On a weekly basis, where's my rest coming from? I don't want to work all week and then have a weekend where I just do I work my home stuff, like where does the rest come? I know a lot of people know what I'm talking about. That your days off are not days off, right? And so where do I build in rest in my week? And then where do I build in rest in my season? Can I think about what is refreshing? Not just like, my great trip, to this beach somewhere, which is nice. I'm not saying don't do that, but how do I build in rest seasonally, to be able to refresh? And just again, coming from this perspective of if I'm a limited human being, I need that to
Yes.
build rest into your life on those three levels, I think can be really helpful. But it's a very intentional thing, and it is pushing back against a culture and against beliefs that say go, go, go. So I think
Absolutely.
that's hard and that's the battle. But I think if we believe that God's going to bear fruit out of that rest, then it's worth it.
Hmm. Thank you, both of you. As I'm thinking about about some of the things we've discussed, a few things really stand out to me. One is just really what you were saying. Congrats on being aware, because that's like half the battle. And so there's an invitation there, is just to begin to ask why. Like, why is my schedule like this? And go a little deeper. Like, does it really need to be like this? What's the worst that could happen if there were a little more margin, if we didn't add that activity or do that thing or take that vacation or get that job or whatever it might be?
Mm-hmm.
To ask why. I think, Paul, you alluded to the idea of believing in our limitations. And I think I feel like that's a prophetic, very challenging word. Do you struggle to believe in your limitations? Because that is a paradigm shift. Because once we can name that reality, it's like, okay, well, I am limited, and so I need to make some adjustments. And I think both of you have spoken about different rhythms. I love that imagery of a gentle morning, Dieula.
Yes.
I would imagine some of y'all who are listening or watching are like, gentle morning. There's no such thing. So maybe your thing is gentle evening, or like gentle midday or gentle siesta. But find that rhythm, the pendulum of rest and work, because work is good and holy, but rest needs to be good and holy as well.
Yes.
So, I mean, I know we've just touched the surface. There's so much more to delve into. But hopefully some of that gets us thinking a little bit differently or deliberately about the pace of our lives. So I would like to say we would love to hear from you. Those of you who are tuning in, what does the overdrive look like in your life? What have you found to be helpful in your pace of life or sustaining a healthier pace of life? If you comment on our page, and those will be in the show notes, we will read those and do our best to integrate the things that we learn from you into our show. There is a quote from the writer, thinker, pastor, philosopher, theologian Dallas Willard that I really love. And he said, "Hurry is the great enemy of the spiritual life in our day." Hurry is the great enemy of the spiritual life in our day. You must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. In a few weeks, many of you will be taking breaks from work for vacation or whatever it might be, and you'll be seeing friends, going to parties, getting gifts, all that kind of stuff. And let's be honest, for most of us, that time is not restful. And so what I just want to suggest or throw out there is, maybe during that time, could you take 30 minutes, maybe an hour, to take some inventory, to do some of that work of interrogating the why and the what, and maybe make some adjustments. So that would be our invitation. So may God go with you, may God bless you, and may He strengthen you and us to do the work. Thanks. Thanks for tuning in to The Work Within. We hope this show blessed you in some way. Please subscribe and leave us a review. Your support means a lot to us. Finally, if you're looking for a therapist, we'd love to help. Visit us at www.watershedinitiative.com to get started. For a limited time, new clients can receive 10% off their first 5 sessions of therapy by mentioning The Work Within. Join us again next time.